So Dr. Premnath will be taking this session. In this session, we'll go through what are the tips and pointers, what we have experienced, what works, what does not work, and how can you accordingly develop your application in a way that increases your chances of getting on to the next round. So over to you, Dr. Premnath.
Okay, great. Good morning to all of you. And I'll get started. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah. We can hear you clearly.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay. So I request that people can put in their questions in the chat box. Okay. And I will try and take them up during this meeting, during this talk, or at the end of it. Today, I thought I'll just share some few pointers for people who are applying for BIG. Of course, you must have heard from Siddhi about the rules, new rules, some modifications to the BIG rules and so on. But I want to focus a little bit more on the basic structure of a BIG proposal. Okay, that's what I'll try and do today. I hope some of you will find this useful and do a better job of some of your applications as well. A few points about just understanding innovation funding first. Many of you might come from academic backgrounds and so on, and you might want to just understand that innovation funding is about technology de-risking. So the kind of projects which many of you might be aware of and you might have explored in the past are exploratory research projects, where the starting point is curiosity and the purpose would be some discovering new knowledge or developing new tools, methods of study. That is not the objective of innovation funding. Okay. Objective of innovation funding is that you're basically doing technology de-risking. So it starts from an idea of a solution to a problem, and the purpose is essentially to create evidence that the solution works and de-risk and validate it. So this should be the primary focus. So sometimes people get caught up in what they're used to doing when they're writing, a DBT, DST kind of proposal. That's why I'm pointing this out first, which is that it's a technology de-risking project essentially. Okay, and that's what we will focus on today. Broadly speaking, all these technology ideas, you need to think of them in the form of problem solving. That there's a problem and you're offering a solution. And that together has come together as a technology idea. That's the purpose of this exercise. Now, when you do this, there's a progression it goes through, starting with proof of principle, then starting with proof of principle, proof of concept, and proof of value. And then rest of the business proceeds. There's a fairly long journey that most of us who are developing technology-based businesses go through. An example of proof of principle is, say, suppose you were doing a diagnostic and you say that there is a particular molecule which detects a particular biomarker. The fact that it detects it is probably proof of principle, right? Proof of concept would be in the form of, say, demonstrating, say, a lateral flow assay with a molecule which is detecting exactly the biomarker of concern. But proof of value is something different, where you're actually showing that it actually creates additional value for users beyond what is already being done in the field. So suppose somebody is doing laboratory tests and they're happy with it. What is the additional value that you're creating for them is a different set of experiments that you need to do to prove that. Obviously, you need to compare it with other alternative products and in given use cases to demonstrate proof of value. Most BIG kind of projects are usually in this range, okay, which is from you start from idea to proof of principle to proof of concept to proof of value. And since there'll be a lot of ideas, a lot of people applying, it helps if you have initial proof of principle already in place. So some initial data being in place to some degree is helpful. Although this, if for daring ideas, I would encourage people to apply, even if they don't have much data, as long as there's some evidence that the idea is sound and workable and so on and so forth. Okay, so just keep this broadly in mind. In drug development, all of you, many of you might be aware of this process, and this is the exact thing that plays out in drug development, right? You start with some amount of discovery research, some amount of preclinical testing that you do, and then you go to clinical trials. What are you doing here? You're basically doing technology de-risking, and a lot of the studies in the preclinical development may fit into something like, say, what BIG might be willing to support, right? But that journey is long, right? And there's a lot of path ahead beyond the initial proof of concept. So if you look at the TRL scales, the technology readiness scales, by the way, there's one available in the BIRAC site. This BIRAC website is there. There's a TRL. All of you should go through these TRL scales that BIRAC has put out for various categories. And this is the URL for it, which you might want to just Google BIRAC TRL scale and you should find it. Okay. But if you look at those 1 to 9 ladder out there, what you're essentially currently, at the concept stage, you're essentially at 1 or 2, and you'll probably move it to perhaps 3, 4, 5, right? That's what you might be doing during a typical BIG project. But there's a longer pathway after that, and as I'll tell you, in a BIG application, it is important that you also think through the rest of the pathway, because you might have to explain what is the path ahead and how you're going to take it to market as well. Okay, so that's a very quick overview. Just to give you a sense of what these grants are for, if you were to think about your business and you're developing technologies and investing money in building the business, essentially you're investing and you're in the red. The y-axis here is money, the x-axis is time. You're basically investing, and then when you come out, into the positive, there's a reward at the end of the day. That reward has to obviously be larger than the investment you're putting in. But what typically happens is that when investors are looking at this, they look at it in comparison to other investment opportunities that they have. And if they think that this investment, the ratio of rewards to investment is not as attractive as other investments, they go away and invest in other businesses. So what you're essentially doing by doing grant funding is make it a little more attractive for investors to come and invest in your particular idea in comparison to other kind of opportunities that are available to them. So this red box here is essentially what, say, BIG is funding, and BIG is essentially reducing your investments required to make it successful and therefore make it more attractive to investors. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is your journey in BIG is, for many of you, would be about getting a little closer to investment readiness. Okay, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. You will have to figure out how you'll raise the next tranche of money. What happens after BIG happens, right? What happens after, say, all the grant funding is exhausted? You will need to create a plan for that as well. The last point I want to make before I talk specifically about the proposal is that there are some generic rules about grant funding. The first thing to remember is grants are basically somebody telling you that we are allowing you to spend this money on behalf of us, right? That's what it is. That's why, that's how it is treated, right? You cannot use two sources of grant funding for the same scope of work. So if you're doing a particular, I'm saying, line of work, suppose it's a diagnostic for a particular product, what you as innovators should think of is you should define pockets of scope which can be funded by multiple different ways. It's okay that one line of work receives multiple grants at different stages. That's perfectly fine, as shown here in the top stage. So maybe the first project is concept to proof of concept. That could be something like BIG, or even BIG can do project B, which is POC to preclinical. Maybe it's BIPP that does, say, the clinical trial support. And then investors will kick in at some point in this line of work. But the same project A, the same scope cannot be funded by 2 grants. So it's a good idea for many of you to plan parts of your studies and focus on that which you want funded by BIG. That you, since BIG is a flagship program of BIRAC, which is one of those which has which is 100% grant. You should use it for especially the one that's a core IP that your company wishes to create. Okay, and that's so. Here's another example below where, say, another line of work, and you have another set of sequence of things where you go to from proof of concept to idea to prototype, and then certifications and field trials. And you might choose that you do BIG in the beginning, right here, and then follow it up with SBRI or BIVP and so on and so forth, along with investor funds to take it ahead. Okay, so this is it, I think, for that. Now let's come to the BIG proposal structure itself. So let's first just, I'll give you a quick overview first. So broadly speaking, the first thing I want to tell you is, if you're working on the BIG application form, my suggestion is that first work on a concept note, which is a slide deck, right? Which clarifies your thoughts before you go into filling up the form. You can start doing the preliminary filling up of the form, but you'll find it a lot easier to fill up the form if you're able to get your concepts and structure right first. If some of you want some structure for the concept note, please contact Siddhi. She will be able to give you that structure as well. A typical BIG concept note proposal, which is aligned with the kind of presentation which you will give finally if you're selected in TEP, consists of these parts, and I just want to run you through this. The first part, the first thing to do is, when we have noticed that when you start talking about a given idea, people quickly tend to jump to conclusions, sometimes the reviewers or the readers, in terms of where you're headed, what you're going to propose, all of those. So it's important that your overview or summary right in the beginning whets appetites, and at the same time clearly points out what is the novel aspects that you're going to come up with and how it's different and so on and so forth, or what new value you're going to create. So that is something which I think you should do very early, so that people don't necessarily assume things about the rest of the proposal itself. The first part of the proposal, by the way, I spoke about how it's technology ideas are just problems and solutions, right? So that it follows the same pattern. The first part you can think of is essentially defining the problem or the unmet need. This is a very important section. Many people falter there. And especially there are many scientists who are so caught up in their science and technology that they want to present a platform, right? They say, this can do everything under the world, right? And so on and so forth. That is not the best approach for innovation funding proposals. For innovation funding proposals, focus on one problem which is well defined, okay? Talk about the importance of it, the solution that is needed, alternatives that are available today and how they fall short, right? So there'll be specific definitions of problems that you're going to talk about essentially, right? Part 2 is about the solution space. You've defined the problem. Now let's talk about what solution you're going to offer and what benefits it offers compared to close alternatives. So imagine a table. I'll come back to each of these. And then a unique value proposition that it presents and what that represents in terms of impact, both social and economic impact, a financial impact for the story that you're trying to tell will eventually be about the how you're going to build a company out of it, which will create impact, right? Now, all this value proposition that you have said comes out because of your solution will be due to a technology, right? And that technology makes that unique value proposition possible. Talk about how it works, a very simple definition, simple explanation of how it works. A graphic might explain that much better. Do you have freedom to operate? We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And do you have, what is the source of technology edge or differentiation? What is the real novel aspect of it, and what is going to be IP strategy? Remember, note that technology is mainly an enabler for this solution. It doesn't come right up front that, oh, look, I do all this beautiful synthetic biology and I'm going to come up with all of these different solutions. That's not the approach. The approach is first problem, come with a solution and say this solution is enabled by this particular technology, right? So now we have talked about problem, you talked about solution, you've talked about technology. The next part is about who will make it happen and the reasons why you have a fairly good chance of success. And that's all about credibility, pointing out why your case is credible. The part one of that sub part of that story is the team itself, the advisors, the completeness of the team, the past experiences, the track record. Another part of it is what past work you have done. If you've worked the same set of tools, or if you worked the same set of problems in the past, or somebody in your team has done that, or you have some reason to have unique insights into it. Preliminary data that might show some technical feasibility for this particular technology as well. And following that, you can then start talking about the project itself, right? So this first 4 parts, you have not yet spoken what exactly you're going to do in the project, right? But it is very important to establish that it is something which is worth doing and why it should be done and why you're the right person to do it, all of those things. Finally, you come to the project, which is the 18 months duration project that you will do under BIG, which is essentially status at the start. You can think of it this way, that think of it in pieces. You're today here. In 18 months, you want to be at some endpoint, desired endpoint, and that journey involves certain scope of work. And that scope of work, you can divide it into certain activities, timelines, and indicators of completion. And you can define milestones with certain timelines where you'll achieve certain targets with a certain budget, right? Now, this part of activities, timelines, indicators, and so on is what comes in the tables, the application form in the BIG form. So if you have understood this well and structured this well, it'll be fine. You don't need to do too many activities. You don't need to do too many different milestones, but it needs to be cohesive. It needs to be focused on whatever that you're planning to do as well. And finally, the commercialization plan, right? The projected GTM pathway. And this is where sometimes you have to do a little bit of careful homework if it's a regulated product, if there are certifications involved, if there are scale-up issues involved, if there are sourcing issues involved. And that process of how you will take it to market and what will follow after the BIG project until the market journey would be something that is important. There's also this aspect where just clarity on what the business is going to be is also important, which I'll talk briefly about as well, right? So I'll just take one more slide, stop for a moment, and then I'll ask Siddhi to tell me if there are any important questions to be addressed. So broadly speaking, your BIG storyline will look something to this effect, right? So what you're saying is, look, here is an unmet need, which if solved will have enormous impact. Obviously, you can't use such vague words. You have to quantify it. You have to be more specific. The solution for that lies in this. People have tried all these different approaches, but the following shortcomings exist, right? We propose to do this, which will be different from what was done in the past. And if successful, solve this specific problem in this way. And for that, this is the methodology we'll follow. We have the following reasons to believe we can be successful. I told you about team, what are preliminary data, whatever that you want to say. We are uniquely positioned to attend this solution, right? We have the background, experience, credibility, track record, etc. behind us. So here is our execution plan with milestones and timelines. And here are the resources we will need to execute that. Here's how we'll source all those resources, and here's what we need from you, right? That's BIG. The first phase, they are providing that 100% grant to you as well. Okay. So at this time, let me just have a quick look at the questions before I proceed ahead, right? I think some of these on eligibility and so on, I'll let Siddhi take up. There's nothing that prevents software from software as a medical device applying for BIG. They would to be encouraged, so please do that, right? There's people who have specific questions, okay? As I've told you, it is idea stage to concept is fine as long as it's feasible. And if you're making certain claims which are new, then try and have some preliminary data to show that if you can. Okay, this is the earliest program of BIRAC, but it is very competitive. I think it's about 5 to 8% success rate. So it's better if you have some reasonably strong proposal to go with, and it's not very vague what you have done, right? If you applied for the BIG call, you can apply again with the same objectives, yes. But if you have been refused previously, please collect the comments and improve on it. That will come up. In fact, some of the presentations will have slides which says, what were the comments and what have you done to improve on it? Okay, so this is something which you should keep in mind as well, right? Yeah, so I have given you roughly that it is the earliest TRL levels that BIG is supporting, right? If it's a very daring idea with a lot of potential, even at concept stage is likely to be considered. If it is something which is not so outstanding in that way, then you may want to bring in a lot more, early supporting data and so on and so forth to show why it's possible and why you think it's a great idea and so on, or why you'll be able to do it, right? I think that's about it, right? Siddhi, any other questions here?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just go to the next segment and then just tell me when to stop. Okay.
Okay.
You
Okay.
have another 10 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So you can take
Okay.
10.
Yeah.
Fine. So here is something which we recommend, that in the very first slide itself, try to put down and whet the appetite of your reader or reviewer. And this you can use also in the form right up front in the summary that you will fill up. A very clear statement of the proof of concept study or whatever the study that you're planning to do. Essentially, you're demonstrating proof of concept or evidence, right, for a solution, for a problem via a novel approach, and thereby delivering a certain important result. Notice there are a few points I have put down here: problem, solution, novelty, important result, right? The problem has to be well defined, so it has to be clear. The solution you're offering, what's new in it? If it's very commonplace, BIG is not necessarily the right place to apply unless there's a lot of new social impact being created in India. And important result, that is what whets people's appetite. That's what tells them, oh, I have to listen to this and this looks interesting, right? So that's what you want to do right up front and then build on each of these things. So as far as the unmet need goes, define the problem, the large unmet need. Talk about the importance of the problem, right? And what is the current standard of care, current solution people are using, and what are the shortcomings? We often find that there are people who will describe the larger problem, but not go deep enough to understand what is already there, right? So this is where questions will come up saying that, have you met any clinician in the field if you're doing a medical problem? Or have you gone to the field ever? Have you spoken to somebody on the field? Do you know what they use today, right? Do you know if this is a problem at all? And so on. So please do your homework on problem definitions very well. It's a good idea to sharpen the problem definition very clearly. I think I have an example here. So let me give you an example. This is a not so vague, but reasonably high level need statement. okay, which says here is that what is needed is a way to perform rapid point of care testing for COVID-19 in travelers. So you have defined travelers for whom, in order to identify and restrict movement of carrier C19 carriers. Okay, this says that this is the larger need. Okay, uh, but people will say immediately, oh, there are these solutions available. There is RT-PCR available, there is rapid test available, and so on and so forth, right? So you need to sharpen it to come to a point where, you know, the need is more convincing, right? And where it's a very clear need statement. So for example, now let me sharpen that. This I'm calling problem definition instead of need identification. I'm calling it, there's a need for a 30-minute rapid RT-PCR for airport departure lounges to rule out COVID-19 carriers with 100% accuracy, right? So what did I do here? I focused it on RT-PCR. Once I say RT-PCR, this 100% accuracy claim, people may be willing to buy, right? It's not, but people will question whether they can do it in 30 minutes. So that's where preliminary evidence might be needed, because that may or may not be something which is commonplace, that people understand that this is even possible. Okay, so please understand it gets more specific, right? Then, and therefore you can be very clear when you're defining your BIG definition. These are some of the comments which we also see when people review it. There'll be as blunt a statement that there is no such need. Okay, person claiming it is, it's not, need seems contrived, you know, they cooked it up, right? It's not, it can be exaggerated need as well, or good solutions already exist, not worth investing in new solutions. The applicant has not done good need identification. He or she needs to speak to a clinician or a farmer. They need to study the use case better. The applicant has missed an more important and pressing need in this field, which is this. So all this can come up. So please think through the need definition and the problem definition very, very carefully. That's a very important point, because that's the start. That's your sort of the first set of slides you're going to use, or the first set of arguments you're going to make that there is such a need. Okay. Now, when you present your solution, people are very vague in how they present their solution. So it's better idea that be very specific. Say, this is my product. Okay, this is how it will look. This is how it will, these are the features it will have. Okay, and this is how it's going to work, right? And it doesn't take much to do that. So it's a good idea to show that this is how it is going to. And if you don't have something prototype, please create a rendering of it. Imagine it, show it. Okay, that this is how it will work. Nowadays, you have so many digital prototyping tools. Why aren't we using that? We can easily do that to demonstrate how a particular product is going to work, right? Now, the technology part of it, it's important to be strike a right balance. Please note that not all people who will be, say, at some point listening to your pitch will be all from the same field, right? So uh, it is important to explain in simple jargonless words what the technology does, and it's always a graphic always helps how it is going to work. And it is when you do this that people will also gauge for soundness of the idea, right? Technology soundness, whether it makes good sense, whether there are leaps being made which are not unjustified. And if it's unjustified, you need to say why you think it is justified, right? That there's a leap. Suppose you say that I can do, picogram sensitivity. You need to think through carefully first, how you would do it, and whether people are, if people have doubts about whether you can do it, how you can justify it or how you can show some of those things, right? So this technology slide is best done simple, easy, explained in a very easy way. When you compare it with other products, we always suggest that you should use a table which clearly, with color coding in whichever way you want, in order to show how you compare with different particular other alternatives that are available. The best way to do a value proposition comparison with these kind of tables is that this parameter which is listed here on the left side should be benefits, right, to your customer, in terms of instead of saying that I use this kind of a transducer, you will say that this allows me this kind of precision in measurement for the user. Okay, because people can't convert, say, going from the transducer to what is its consequence of it for the clinician who's going to use it. Talk about what impact or what difference it's going to make to the end user, and that should be coming on this first column out here, and then you're comparing various different technologies. Always focus on the most important kind of benefits that you want to show. Sometimes a very long list of minor differences doesn't help. Okay, it looks very it's not like you move the needle in any big way. It looks like you're just adding features, you're just making it a little more jazzier and so on and so forth, combining a few things, but the most important problem may not have been addressed. So if you connect to the most important problem here and show that you are better, that is definitely a plus for your proposal. Now, the BIG project itself. The BIG project itself, as I told you, one way to think about it is that here is your current status, right? You would have done some studies. There'll be a version 1 of your prototype or some alpha prototype or some early experiments, right? And you should be knowing what it can do and what you cannot do today, and what you wish to demonstrate in your as proof of concept or proof of value. And the end goal. So you take the left side first and then the right side, which is where do you want to be 18 months from now? If you want to have these things achieved, right? That's the goal, right? You'll show this is where you want to be at the end of 18 months. And in between, whatever you need to do over there in between is the scope of your project. It could be some set of prototype developments. It could be certain testing and experiments, which are lab scale validations. It could be animal studies. It could be some simple pot trials, and so on and so forth. Any kind of validation experiments that you are doing over there and progressing it ahead. We also advise people that you should hit some important goals in your BIG such that your next whatever fundraise you do is a little easier. It's quite likely that suppose you're going to say a seed fund to raise money, they will want you to have achieved a few important goals, right, in your BIG. And that should be some of the end goals that you want to reach by the end of your BIG. And that's in the larger interest of your technology and your company, not just winning a BIG project, but in making the most out of a BIG project as well, right? There are some simple points about just having clarity on the business itself. Okay, people need to think through simple concepts of what is your customer offering, right? That's what's a product. So what will be eventually bought by a customer? Okay, it need not. Please remember that it's not just a product you might have conceived. You might have to think through, will it be integrated with other things? It'll be part of other things. If it's part of other things, will that other company be your customer actually? So who will pay? Who is the customer is another question. And it's meant for whom? Who will it serve eventually as a product or service? The value propositions of what value it's creating for home and compared to what other alternatives that are available, and the revenue model of what will be the price, cost, and so on, and the key risks and uncertainties. Now, if you're asked, or if people want to understand what price cost, this comes up especially in the context of if you're claiming affordable products, you need to know, what is already in the market and what price it is at, and how do you compare to that. But there are other things that come out of such kind of things. If somebody's careless in putting these thoughts together, you can make out who is naive in business and who is not. So for example, one common mistake we see from many academics is, oh yeah, I can make this at 100 rupees. I will have a 10% margin and I'll sell at 110 rupees, right? That reveals that the person doesn't understand how pricing is done in the marketplace and who is getting what share of the value creation in the marketplace, right? It often people have to understand that in many cases it might be that the price of the product, the MRP, might be say 5-6 times of your bill of materials. Okay, and if you don't know that, you will be in a soup trying to explain this to people who are quizzing you at some point, right? So please think through this when you're putting down numbers as well. The commercialization plan requires a little bit of a flow, and you need to think through beyond the BIG. So you'll need to think through what will be the go-to-market strategy. In this, for many cases where it's medical products, it's important to understand the regulatory pathway. Okay, and for this, please do have discussions with the people who understand the regulatory pathway. Venture Center also has a regulatory information and facilitation center with whom you can consult. I hope they will maybe organize a short clinic also for people who can sign up and who can get inputs on this. Besides that, there's also this aspect of route to markets, understanding who will be the buyer, who will do the manufacturing, who will, who will get the approvals. Sometimes if say you're doing a coating for an implant, but not the implant itself, will the approvals come for you or for the person who is making the implants, which means you might need to sign up with the person making the implants to get that coating working, right? So it's you need to think through that kind of the pathway in terms of how your product will eventually hit the market and how you're going to do it at different stages, how you're going to finance it. And here you can think through multiple ways of financing, including grants, seed funding, investments, and so on, so forth. And this might be, say, one of your slides over there. Many people worry about novelty and things being known, and we see a few different approaches people take, some not very healthy. One is they tend to say that everything they are doing is new. Okay. By the way, this has a big risk, which is that first of all, if everything you're doing is new, everything has to be proven. Okay, and that requires extra work, right? So it's good idea to break it down into parts and say, yes, part A, part B, and part D are known, but part C is what I am doing new. Okay. Another approach is people who discount it thinking nothing is new, right? That is also another possibility. And that happens sometimes with people who are integrating things into different products, right? And there also one needs to think through. Sometimes clever integration can also, there can be novel elements. You can get IP even for designs. You can get IP for the way you implement things as well, okay? So if so this is how you would use it in a BIG application, which is that have clarity that your know-how has so many parts, which is novel, which is the location where you're making a leap in terms of the unknown. And this is the one typically that you're going to prove, right? So some of your proof of concept studies will focus on this unknown, okay? And if it looks very contrary to what people assume is true, then you need to have some preliminary data, okay, in order to say that this is feasible, that there's a reasonable chance of success. People will be willing to take that leap of faith, provided there's a reasonable backing that it is possible, right? If it's contrary to current science, you'll have great difficulty doing it. If it is difficult, if it's not possible to design an experiment to prove it, again, you'll have great difficulty to to demonstrate that part of the know-how. So these are some inputs on novelty. Finally, a couple of things on intellectual property.
Excuse me,
please,
sir.
yeah.
You have in 4 to 5 minutes, if you can wind up. I think you have 4-5 slides only.
Yeah, I'm going to finish. Yeah. So intellectual property, right? Let me point out a couple of important concepts to know. The first one is called freedom to operate. Okay. Now, freedom to operate has to do, irrespective of whether you are going to file a patent or not, you have to ensure that you are not prevented from practicing a piece of know-how because somebody else owns a patent on it. Okay. And that is irrespective of whether you're filing a patent or not. And the corollary to this is, even if you own a patent, it doesn't mean you can practice it. Okay. You can own a patent, but somebody owns an underlying patent which prevents you from practicing is also a problem. So it's an important, so example, suppose there's a reaction A to B and you have come up with a new catalyst C, right? You will say get a patent for a new catalyst C. But if somebody else has a patent covering reaction A to B for a generic system, as a generic system, then you still need to have a permission from the person to practice the reaction A to B with your new catalyst C. Okay, so this freedom to operate is something which is asked in BIG as well. It doesn't require you to do an extensive study, but at least please do a quick search in India to understand if there are people who have filed patents in this space and whether you're not infringing their work. Okay, that to that extent is important. But overall, as you build your company, it's important that you do a thorough job with it. You can get it done through attorneys, or like, for example, there are regional tech transfer offices of BIRAC and NBM. One of them is at Venture Center called techx.in, which can also help you with such things. Now, other than that, you of course need to know what you're going to file IP for. It could be patents, it could be designs, it could be, it could be certain software, copyrights. You might decide certain things you'll keep as trade secrets. That's fine. Identify those things. One point which I wanted to comment here is, some of you may want to hide certain things, in your recipe that you're trying to do. I would suggest the approach there is that you can spell out everything else which you don't want to hide. You can say this is confidential and say that. Okay. But if that confidential part is very important to establishing novelty or soundness of your idea, you would be better advised to file patents or protect it some other way. Otherwise, examiners can come back or reviewers can come back and say, we don't have enough information to comment on whether it's novel or sound. Okay. And that's pretty damaging for a application. Okay. So know what exactly you want to keep confidential and limit it to that. Okay. And don't try to have everything confidential, then there'll be nothing to talk about in the proposal, right? Final slides. This is a slide on, this is the kind of slide you will make for milestone charts. I just want to point out there's a milestone number, there are targets and what are the indicators to achieve by that milestone, when it will be done, and so on and so forth, right? There are these milestone checks. The amount of money that comes up at each stage may roughly look like this. This time they have increased the first one to up to 20. So that's good for people who might be setting up some equipment or some facility in some way. The budget breakup, this has two main parts, recurring and non-recurring. For your own benefit, for your own estimation, you should break up recurring for your own purposes into multiple subparts and think through that as well. For the team slides, you may need to actually make a strong case of why your team is strong, relevant, and complete in the sense, and you don't have to have everybody as an employee of your team, but there should be advisors signed up to cover every part of your different project. Suppose you need fermentation expertise, you need downstream expertise. Try to bring people who understand some of that, or people who worked with certain systems. Otherwise, the credibility to do all of that work, will be suspect. Whether you can achieve it in 18 months, people may not have the time to learn in those 18 months. It's important that you put all those teams together. This is the scale which they have provided in this time's BIG. Okay. And this criteria is shown this way. I just want to tell you that when I was discussing, you saw that I emphasized need identification, value propositions, technical feasibility. Those are all very important categories here, and team and commercialization strategies. There are others listed there as well. So final slide is try to be realistic. Don't be specific. Don't use generalities. Um, Simple language, jargon free. Um, as I told you, it's a good idea to upload a slide deck as a in a PDF format as a concept note. It clarifies a lot of things for your reviewers, and then use that to, in simple, precise words, write up the rest of the proposal. Right. Start with a brief summary, as I told you, which allows people to quickly get interested in what you're going to be doing. And I think the rest is easy for you to understand. Yeah, and please don't wait for the last minute. Many people we know have waited for the last minute and not been able to submit. Okay, they miss the boat. It's better to do it reasonably early. And you can do a lot of preparation in your concept note before you start filing. So let's say 30th is the last date. I would recommend that spend 15 days planning your concept note, detailing it. When we do all of those things, you also end up building teams, adding people here, there, getting there, okay, collecting the data, all of that. Finally, your last 10 days is, submitting the application essentially, but don't wait for the last day. Okay, so I'll stop here.